The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program are those of the host, Otto Bismarck, and do not necessarily reflect the official policies or positions of Civil Defiance, its production team, or its affiliates. This podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and is provided as is without any guarantee of accuracy, completeness, or applicability of the information presented. Listeners are solely responsible for their use of this information and should not rely upon the content as professional, legal, or financial advice. By listening, you acknowledge that you are proceeding at your own risk, and that Civil Defiance disclaims all liability for any actions taken or not taken based on the information provided herein. Welcome back to Civil Defiance, the only place left on the airwaves where the truth isn't sugar-coated, sterilized, or served up with a participation trophy. I am your host, Otto Bismarck, and today we are not just debating politics, we are confronting the intellectual catastrophe that is the modern American electorate. For too long, we've been polite, we've used euphemisms, we've talked about low information voters and political polarization. I'm done with the soft language. Today's topic is harsh, it's ugly, and it is the single most destructive force in American politics, the sheer, staggering idiocy of the majority of the American voting public. They say the people deserve the government they get. If that is true, then we are a nation that deserves a government of charlatans because we have become a nation of the easily duped. The politicians we despise, the so-called Uni-Party, that corporate-funded, self-serving, bipartisan cartel, they don't fear the populace, they depend on its ignorance. Their entire strategy is built on the simple, brutal arithmetic that there are more lazy, angry, and unresearched voters than there are thoughtful, intellectually honest ones. Their path to power is paved with the unread headlines, the unverified social media posts, and the unexamined prejudices of the people they are supposed to serve. And the most sickening part, the voters line up to play the fool. We are going to spend the next 70 minutes dissecting this cultural sickness. We're going to dismantle the three foundational lies the modern voter tells themselves. The lie of effort, the belief that a 5-second skim of a social media post counts as research, the lie of innocence, the delusion that their vote is based on rational policy when it's often a knee-jerk reaction driven by prejudice and fear, and the lie of power, the false hope that they are fighting the system when they are, in fact, the Uni-Party's most valuable, most reliable, and most pathetic useful fools. If you're already offended, I invite you to turn off the podcast. But if you have a shred of intellectual integrity left, stay. Because what you are about to hear is a Civil Defiance Manifesto against the tyranny of the low common denominator. Before we dissect the voter, we must first dissect the monster they feed. I use the term Uni-Party relentlessly, and I do so with precision. This is not a cynical metaphor. It is a literal description of the American power structure. You think you have a choice between two opposing ideologies, a left and a right. That is the foundational lie that makes the entire system of control possible. You do not have two parties. You have one party, the party of permanent power, of corporate interests, and of the entrenched bureaucratic state, and it has two public relations departments, one painted red, the other painted blue. Let's start with the newest, most pervasive disease, social media voting. When did the act of casting a ballot devolve from a civic responsibility requiring diligent research into a reflex triggered by a personalized algorithm? We have millions of people who spend hours doom scrolling, consuming what are essentially 15-second emotional advertisements and coordinated psychological operations, and then walk into a voting booth believing they are informed. They are not informed. They are programmed. They are the modern propaganda slave. Think about the process. A complicated piece of foreign policy, a nuanced economic bill, or a critical judicial appointment is reduced to a viral clip with a catchy, infuriating headline. The clip is engineered by political operatives, foreign governments, or corporate interest groups, the hidden architects of the Uni-Party, and it is designed not to inform you, but to trigger a specific high-octane emotion, anger, moral outrage, or a sense of tribal validation. Your brain processes this emotional charge as information, and here's the key, the truly idiotic part, because the emotion is so strong, because it was delivered by a source that confirms your existing bias, your echo chamber, you believe that intensity equals truth. The faster it makes your blood boil, the more convinced you are of its validity, and the less likely you are to actually investigate it. The Uni-Party knows this. They don't need to win a debate on tax policy. They need to create a 30-second meme that makes the other side look like a literal demon. And the propaganda slave, the voter who has outsourced their critical thinking to Silicon Valley's algorithms and 1,000 bot farms, falls for it every single time. They are too lazy to read a bill, too distracted to check a source, and too intellectually flabby to consider a position that challenges their carefully curated identity. Their research is a click on a sensational headline. Their opinion is a copy-paste of a talking point they saw on a platform designed for entertainment. This isn't democracy. It's a digital cattle drive, and the American voter is stampeding right toward the slaughterhouse of their own making. Let's look at the data. Multiple nonpartisan studies consistently show that over half of the American electorate dedicates less than an hour total to research on the actual policies and platforms of their candidates before an election. Less than an hour. That's less time than they spend picking out a new pair of shoes or choosing a movie on Netflix. They are making a decision about the entire future of the republic with less effort than they put into deciding what to have for dinner. You are sacrificing your liberty, your economic future, and the stability of the nation for the fleeting, pathetic dopamine hit of feeling morally superior on a comments thread. You are voting a line of code, not a platform. You are the propaganda slave, and you are the reason the Uni-Party keeps winning. Now let's pull back the curtain on the second and perhaps most corrosive pillar of the idiot voter complex, the ballot cast on unexamined prejudice. Forget the shiny new distractions of social media for a moment. We still have a vast entrenched voting demographic whose decision is rooted in something far older and uglier, underlying racist prejudices and a fundamental chronic lack of education. This is not a partisan attack. This is a cold, hard diagnosis of a national, civic, intellectual failure. When a politician from any part of the Uni-Party campaigns not on policy but on a barely veiled appeal to racial resentment, cultural fear, or religious identity, they are targeting this group. They are targeting the voter who is too uneducated to understand the complexities of international trade or constitutional law, but who perfectly understands the coded language that tells them their neighbor is the real problem. Look at the history of manufactured wedge issues. They are rarely about the policy itself. They are about othering. They are about creating a scapegoat, an immigrant, a cultural minority, a religious group, and making the vote an act of self-defense against this perceived threat. They tell this voter, if you vote for me, I will protect you from them. The genius of the Uni-Party cynicism is how they manipulate this. One side uses economic anxiety to stoke racial fear in one block. The other side uses identity politics to stoke cultural resentment in another. Both are using the same tool, prejudice, a weapon that only works on the uneducated or on those who have willingly chosen to be willfully blind. A truly educated citizen, one who studies history, economics, and sociology, understands that a society's problems are systemic and rarely caused by a single, easily identifiable other. But the undereducated mentality craves simple, villainous answers. They crave a simple, satisfying enemy. And this mental state is what politicians bank on. And so their vote is a pathetic spasm of fear. They are not voting for a policy that will improve their life. They are voting for the momentary comfort of believing they have successfully pushed back against a perceived cultural or racial threat. This is a vote born of ignorance, not ideology. It is the most insulting, demeaning type of vote a citizen can cast. It renders the entire process of policy debate utterly meaningless. The system isn't broken, it's being steered by the lowest information, highest prejudice voters that the Uni-Party can muster, and they are masters at the muster. And this brings us to the ultimate cynical indictment of our political class. The single phrase that should chill every informed, thoughtful person to the bone. It was spoken by our current president after a decisive victory, and it was said with a smile, a wink, and an utterly transparent acknowledgement of his political strategy. He said to the public, in full view of the cameras, "I love the poorly educated." Think about the sheer, unadulterated contempt wrapped up in those 5 words. It wasn't a lament. It wasn't a call to improve our nation's education system. It was a celebration. A political figure, one who ascended to the highest office, was openly admitting that the key to his success was not the brilliance of his policies, not the depth of his character, and certainly not the intellectual rigor of his base. The key was the poorly educated. "I love the poorly educated" is the Uni-Party's secret handshake made public. It is the perfect distillation of their entire cynical model. It's a declaration of war on intelligence. It tells voters, don't bother with the books, the data, the research, your gut, your prejudice, your easily manipulated rage. That's all I need. It's a strategic choice. It signifies that the political investment is no longer in winning over the skeptical, thoughtful voter, but in expanding the emotional low-effort block. Why spend millions on a nuanced, data-driven white paper when you can spend it on a targeted social media campaign full of lies that the poorly educated will instantly believe? It's an embrace of the bigots ballot. When you love the poorly educated, you are implicitly loving the voter who relies on the simple, pre-programmed prejudices we just discussed because they lack the historical and critical framework to reject them. This quote, this single line, is a civic death wish issued by a political class that values power above all else. They understand that a truly informed, independently thinking electorate is ungovernable and a threat to the cozy, corporate-funded status quo. The Uni-Party doesn't fear the idiot voter, they farm the idiot voter. They cultivate a perpetually uneducated, perpetually enraged electorate because it ensures their stability. No matter which side of the fake political spectrum you stand on, you are surrounded by leaders who, in their heart of hearts, prefer you to be poorly educated. And the tragedy, the utter nauseating idiocy, the poorly educated voter loved him back for it. They took the contempt as a compliment. They cheered the insult. They saw it as validation that their intellectual laziness was, in fact, an authentic, rebellious virtue. This is the intellectual ground zero of modern America. And where does this perfectly pliable, intellectually bankrupt voter come from? Do they spring fully formed from the forehead of a focus group? No. They are manufactured. They are the deliberate product of a 50-year project to dismantle the American mind, and the assembly line is our public education system. You think the disaster that is modern schooling is an accident, a result of incompetence or lack of funding? That is the most naive belief a person could hold. The system is not broken. It is a stunning success. It is achieving exactly what its architects, the founders of the modern Uni-Party, designed it to do, to produce a citizen who is just smart enough to operate the machinery of the economy, but too intellectually neutered to ever question the machine's purpose. Let me be more specific, because this is not some vague conspiracy theory. This is a documented historical project. The shift began over a century ago with the ideological heirs of the Prussian model of schooling. The goal of that system was explicit: to create obedient soldiers and docile factory workers. It was never about fostering sovereign individuals. That model was imported into America by so-called progressives who saw independent, critical thought not as a virtue, but as a threat to their vision of a centrally planned, collectivist society. They replaced the classical model of education, a model based on rhetoric, logic, history, and philosophy, designed to create a well rounded, formidable citizen, with a model of vocational specialization and social conditioning. They stripped the curriculum of its soul. They replaced the rigorous study of the Constitution with watered down civics classes that taught students not how to challenge power, but how to obey it. They replaced the grand, complex, and often morally ambiguous sweep of history with a sanitized, cartoonish narrative of perpetual progress, a narrative that conveniently positions the current establishment as its glorious culmination. They taught students what to think, never how to think. Critical thinking was reduced to a buzzword on a teacher's syllabus, a box to be checked, while the entire structure of the school day, the bells, the rigid schedules, the mindless memorization and regurgitation of facts for standardized tests, was designed to crush genuine intellectual curiosity. The result is a multi-generational cascade of historical and civic illiteracy. We have millions of citizens who cannot name their own congressman, who do not understand the Bill of Rights, and who believe that the government is a magical source of infinite money. They have been taught to see the state as a benevolent parent, not as a dangerous servant that must be perpetually watched. They have been conditioned to value conformity over courage and social acceptance over intellectual integrity. The school system did not teach them to deconstruct an argument, to identify a logical fallacy, or to weigh competing sources of evidence. It taught them to sit down, shut up, and fill in the correct bubble on a multiple choice test. It taught them that there is always one right answer, and that it will always be provided by an authority figure. Is it any wonder, then, that these same students graduate into a world where they seek out the comforting authority of a party line talking point, a media-approved narrative, or a viral emotion-laden headline? The public school system is the Uni-Party's single most effective recruitment center. It is the factory that builds the propaganda slave, year after year, with chilling industrial efficiency. This meticulously crafted ignorance creates the perfect breeding ground for the most insidious of all modern political tools, the politics of grievance. The uneducated citizen, stripped of historical context and critical thinking, is a vessel waiting to be filled with resentment. The Uni-Party has become masters of this dark art. They no longer campaign on aspiration or grand national projects. They campaign on a carefully curated list of who you should hate and why you are a victim. One side tells its base that they are the victims of a vast shadowy cabal of coastal elites, socialist professors, and godless heathens who are actively trying to destroy their way of life. The other side tells its base that they are the victims of systemic oppression, of billionaires, of deplorables, and of a patriarchal system that has been designed from the ground up to ensure their failure. Both narratives are, of course, gross oversimplifications designed to do one thing: to absolve the individual of any responsibility for their own life and to channel their frustrations into a politically useful rage. The voter is no longer a citizen participating in a shared project. They are a member of an aggrieved tribe, and their vote is not a constructive act of governance, but a destructive act of vengeance against the tribe that they have been told is responsible for all their problems. It is the most cynical and the most effective form of social control ever devised. Let's move on to the psychological mechanism that ties all this intellectual laziness and bigotry together: the manufactured hate. You don't just disagree with your political opponents anymore, you hate them. You believe they are fundamentally evil, stupid, and a danger to your children, your country, and your dog. This is called effective polarization, and it is the single most powerful tool the Uni-Party uses to ensure the idiot voter shows up to the polls, furious and ready to vote against the enemy. Effective polarization is the difference between policy disagreement and personal loathing. It means that you don't just reject the other party's platform, you reject the person who supports it. You believe they are not merely mistaken, but morally defunct. Why is this so effective for the political establishment? Because when your vote is driven by hate for the opposition, it liberates you from the painful process of research. You don't need to read the candidate's platform. You don't need to verify the facts. All you need to know is that your opponent is not the monster on the other side. You are voting against the boogeyman, not for a solution. And the Uni-Party loves this. They don't have to deliver results. They don't have to solve problems like inflation, border security, or infrastructure collapse. Their job is simply to keep the hatred factory running at maximum capacity. They need to spend $10 million on attack ads convincing you that the other side is literally composed of child-eating space lizards, because that is infinitely cheaper and more effective than spending $10 million on a plan to fix the economy. This manufactured hate is fueled by the myth of the extremist majority, the media, acting as the primary propaganda arm for the Uni-Party, has perfected the art of false polarization. They take the most absurd fringe lunatic from the other side, give them a national platform, and scream, "This is what half of America believes." The average sane American voter, and yes, there are a few of you left, does not hold those extreme views. But the lazy, emotional voter, the propaganda slave, sees this outrage bait and immediately believes it. Their prejudice confirms it. Their algorithm confirms it. They are instantly convinced that the entire opposition party is a monolithic block of dangerous zealots. This creates the perfect feedback loop. The political class, the Uni-Party, pushes extreme, hateful rhetoric. The media sensationalizes and amplifies this, presenting it as the mainstream. The idiot voter, too lazy to seek out the quiet, moderate voices, reacts with terror and rage. They vote exclusively based on that terror and rage, thus cementing the power of the very politicians who manipulated them. You have been duped into thinking your political struggle is a war between good and evil. It is not. It is a cynical, managed rivalry between two factions of the Uni-Party who both profit immensely from your low information rage. You are the emotional fuel for a system designed to keep you powerless and perpetually angry. The final crucial idiocy we must confront in this first half is the death of personal opinion. The low information voter does not possess opinions. They possess parroted talking points. Their political stance is an ensemble of prefabricated beliefs given to them by their chosen media outlet, their preferred social media guru, or their political tribe. Ask a typical voter to explain the difference between quantitative easing and fiscal stimulus without looking it up. They will fail. Ask them to explain how a bill they are passionately arguing about will be funded. They will sputter. Ask them to give you a single counter argument to their own position that they genuinely understand. They cannot do it. Their mind is not a factory of thought. It is a warehouse of slogans. This isn't just about a lack of facts. It's about a total failure of intellectual courage. It takes courage to look at a complex issue and say, "I don't know," or "both sides have a point," or "this solution contradicts my existing beliefs, but the data supports it." The idiot voter will never do this. Why? Because their political identity is their personal identity. They wear their partisan label like a sports jersey. To admit an error, to concede a point, or to research an opposing view is seen as an act of tribal betrayal. They are locked in a prison of manufactured authenticity. They believe they are authentic because they are fiercely loyal to the beliefs they were told to adopt. This means they are predictable, easily controlled, and perfectly slotted into the Uni-Party matrix. The political machine doesn't want thinkers, they want repeatable consumers of ideology. And the American voter, in their intellectual laziness, has become the perfect consumer. They don't have opinions, they have reflexes. And the politician who controls the stimuli controls the vote. This is the tragic, pathetic reality of the modern American democracy. If you think this cultural idiocy is a unique feature of the 21st century, You are poorly educated in history. This is a story as old as power itself. We are watching the American voter execute a perfect historical parallel, the collapse of the Roman citizen. Think about the final stages of the Roman Republic. It did not fall because of superior invading armies from the outside. It collapsed because of the internal decay of the citizenry. The citizens of Rome, once fierce, independent thinkers who demanded accountability from their Senate and their generals, slowly devolved into a mass reliant on bread and circuses, panem et circenses. The politicians, the Uni-Party of the late Republic, realized they didn't need to win over the people with wise policy or genuine leadership. They needed two things: free food, economic handouts, / welfare, and violent, distracting entertainment, the blood sport of the arena. What is the difference between an ancient Roman demanding grain and tickets to the Colosseum and the modern American demanding their preferred candidate, give them student loan forgiveness, and endless, personalized digital outrage, the modern circus? The psychology is identical. The abdication of personal responsibility and the demand for a state-sponsored distraction from the consequences of their own intellectual laziness. The Roman citizen stopped being a sovereign entity and became a client. They didn't vote based on the laws that would preserve the republic. They voted for the politician who offered the most appealing short-term bribe, whether it was a barrel of grain or a promise to stick it to the other half of the country. They stopped doing the hard work of self-governance and became a passive consumer of the state's political theater. And what happens when a citizen stops being a sovereign and becomes a consumer? The republic dies. The politicians, no longer constrained by a vigilant, educated public, become untouchable. They merge into a self-sustaining elite, the Uni-Party of the empire, and they rule, not by consent of the governed, but by the cynical manipulation of the lowest common denominator. We are precisely at the bread and circuses stage. Our political discourse is a gladiatorial contest designed to be loud, distracting, and utterly meaningless to the actual problems facing us. And the idiot voter, the spiritual descendant of the easily duped Roman plebeian, cheers on the blood sport while the foundations of the republic rot beneath their feet. The consequences of this intellectual decay are not theoretical. They are measured in the destruction of your future, the corrosion of your wallet, and the staggering weight of the national debt. The idiot vote has an economic price tag, and you are the one paying it. Why is our debt ceiling perpetually being raised with the panicked urgency of a sinking ship? Because the Uni-Party knows that the majority of voters do not understand macroeconomics, nor do they care to. Their economic vote is based on one simple, idiotic metric: what did I get this week? The political strategy, perfected by both sides of the Uni-Party, is to bribe the present with the future. They offer immediate, tangible, short-term benefits, a tax rebate, an increased benefit, a targeted handout, and finance it with debt that your children, or maybe your grandchildren, will have to pay. And the idiot voter applauds the politician for this act of intergenerational theft. They confuse a temporary sugar high for sound economic planning. They lack the discipline, the historical context, or the financial literacy to understand that borrowing $1 billion today means $1 billion less prosperity tomorrow. They vote for the candidate who promises to tax the other guy or spend more on their group, completely failing to grasp the fundamental, brutal law of economics. There is no free lunch, only deferred payment. This reliance on low information voters allows the Uni-Party to avoid the necessary, painful, and deeply unpopular conversations about fiscal solvency. They cannot tell you the truth, that the entitlement programs are structurally unsound, that the military budget is bloated, or that the tax code is an unholy labyrinth of corporate carve-outs. Because telling you the truth would require you to be an adult, a citizen, and a thinker. And we have already established they love the poorly educated because they are easy to control with the promise of more stolen goods. When you cast a vote based on a single self-serving benefit promised to you on a TikTok video, You are voting to sell the future of your country for a pittance. You are not a patriot. You are an opportunistic, short-sighted fool. We must also address the deep-seated intellectual cowardice that makes this idiocy the default setting. It is easy to point fingers at the politicians, but the fault lies with the voter who is afraid to think for themselves. The modern idiot voter is terrified of two things: nuance and isolation. Nuance is terrifying because it requires effort. It requires accepting that your political opponent might be correct on one issue. It requires you to hold two contradictory ideas in your mind at the same time and evaluate them without resorting to rage. The low information brain cannot handle this cognitive load. It demands black and white, good and evil, us versus them. The Uni-Party provides this simple, clean narrative, and the voter snaps it up like starving dogs. Isolation is terrifying because the political tribe has replaced community. For millions of Americans, their political affiliation is the single most defining feature of their social life. To deviate from the talking points, to express a thought that runs counter to the groupthink, means facing social and digital exile. The fear of being called a traitor, a sellout, or a fascist, or whatever the pejorative of the day is more potent than the desire to seek the truth. Therefore, the idiot voter votes to maintain their social standing, not to maintain the integrity of the republic. They are casting a ballot to prove their loyalty to the hive, not to exercise the sovereign rights of a free man. This is the tyranny of the majority, not a majority that oppresses a minority by law, but a majority that oppresses its own members by conformity and intellectual terror. The Uni-Party doesn't need to enforce its ideology with police. It enforces it with shame and exclusion, which the idiot voter values more than freedom. Your lack of research is not merely laziness. It is an act of intellectual self-mutilation designed to ensure you fit seamlessly into the machine that controls you. If the vote is based on rage and prejudice, what happens when the policies fail? The answer is simple. The Uni-Party is never held accountable. In a rational system, a voter would look at their economic stagnation, the decaying infrastructure, and the endless foreign wars, and they would demand answers from the people they put in charge. But in the current system, the idiot voter just demands a new scapegoat. The Uni-Party has mastered the art of the perpetual scapegoat. Every failure is immediately and hysterically blamed on the other half of the Uni-Party structure. When the economy tanks, one side screams it's the greedy corporations. The other side screams it's the lazy poor. The actual policy failures of the past three administrations are never examined. When a foreign policy disaster strikes, one side blames the preceding president. The other side blames their current political rivals. The structural failings of the permanent bureaucratic state, the true core of the Uni-Party, are never touched. This is a magic trick performed for the benefit of the intellectually impaired. The politician you voted for can be a total, verifiable failure, but your rage is so perfectly targeted at the other team that you return to the polls and vote for your same failure again, solely to prevent the other monster from winning. This is why the same faces, the same failed policies, the same bloated budgets, and the same structural problems persist for decades. The Uni-Party relies on the idiot voter to possess the memory of a goldfish and the rage of a pit viper. They get to loot the treasury and run the country into the ground, and the voter's predictable emotional reaction ensures the cycle of unaccountability is never broken. Your outrage is not a threat to them. It is their insurance policy. Your idiocy ensures their longevity. We have spent 55 minutes diagnosing the sickness, the propaganda slave, the bigot's ballot, the useful fool. Now, let's talk about the only possible cure. And if you're looking for a comfortable answer, you have come to the wrong podcast. The solution is not a new political party. The solution is not a charismatic leader. The solution is not an election. The solution is individual civil defiance against intellectual laziness. You cannot fix the system, until you fix yourself. This means executing a personal counter-revolution against the forces that seek to simplify your mind and hijack your emotions. This is a non-negotiable list of demands for anyone who claims to be a responsible citizen. Stop voting by reflex. Before you cast a ballot, you must spend at least 20 hours researching the candidates and the policies. That is non-negotiable. Not 5 minutes on a social feed. 20 hours. Read the full text of the bill. Read the long form interviews. Read the donor lists. If you cannot invest 20 hours, you have no business voting. Stay home. Your ignorant vote is a hazard to the republic. Actively seek the antidote. Every day, you must consume information that is designed to challenge your core political beliefs. Read the opposing think tank's white paper. Listen to the person who makes you angriest. Your goal is not to agree with them, but to be able to articulate their position better than they can. If you cannot do that, you do not understand the issue, and your opinion is worthless. Detribalize your identity. Your worth as a human being is not tied to a political team. Stop wearing the jersey. Stop identifying with a party. Your first loyalty is to truth, logic, and self-sovereignty. If your political tribe tells you to ignore facts, they are not your community. They are your manipulators. Choose silence and isolation over compliant idiocy. Demand nuance. Reject any politician or media figure who presents the world as a simple battle between heroes and villains. They are insulting your intelligence. Demand the complex reality. Demand the trade-offs. The greatest act of civil defiance is to insist on the intellectual difficulty of reality in a world addicted to simplified lies. You must stop believing that you are a passive victim of propaganda. The propaganda only works because you are intellectually open to it. You are the one who clicks the headline. You are the one who stays in the echo chamber. You are the one who chooses comfort over truth. The Uni-Party is powerful, but its power is derived entirely from your voluntary weakness. The true power of the vote is not its quantity, but its quality. 1,000 idiot votes driven by rage and prejudice are worthless. One single, thoughtful, thoroughly researched vote, cast with a deep understanding of the consequences and a rejection of tribal comfort, is the only vote that can actually save this republic. We conclude this 70-minute manifesto with a final, unavoidable truth. The American experiment was not built on the belief that men are inherently good or inherently wise. It was built on the belief that men could, through effort, reason, and constant vigilance, earn their own freedom and justify their own sovereignty. We have failed that test. We have abdicated that responsibility. We have allowed convenience, comfort, and the soothing balm of collective rage to replace the arduous, solitary, and often unpopular work of thinking. We have traded our birthright, the right to self-governance, for the digital equivalent of bread and circuses. And the result is the Uni-Party. It is the cynical, self-perpetuating machine that operates regardless of which idiot you elect. It is the political class that loves the poorly educated because they know that those without knowledge are easily made into slaves. If you are offended by anything I have said today, I welcome your offense. Your anger is a sign that the truth has penetrated the layers of digital programming and tribal comfort you have built around your own mind. Do not direct that anger at me. Direct it at yourself. Ask yourself, did I vote for my candidate because of a 15-second TikTok video? Did I vote based on a single coded phrase that played on my underlying prejudice? Have I spent more time arguing against the other side than I have spent researching my own side? If the answer is yes to any of those questions, then you are the problem. You are the source of the rot. You are the useful fool who allows the Uni-Party to remain entrenched, untouchable, and perpetually in power. The only true act of civil defiance left is the commitment to intellectual sovereignty. It is the painful choice to step out of the comforting rage of the tribe, to stand alone in the unpopular truth, and to refuse to be programmed by the algorithmic lies of the modern era. Do the work. Do the research. Challenge your mind. Reject the comfortable hate. And if you cannot do that, then stop voting. Stop pretending to be a citizen. Because your ignorant vote, cast out of intellectual cowardice and borrowed rage, is a weapon aimed directly at the heart of the Republic. The choice is yours. Remain the Uni-Party's fool, or begin the lonely, difficult, and necessary work of becoming a sovereign mind. This is Otto Bismarck, and this is Civil Defiance. We will be back next week to discuss why silence is a louder protest than any march.